And Congressman, it's great to have you on Bloomberg Radio. Will Congress provide whatever funds the president asks for next week?
Joe, it's good to be with you. The answer is I would be surprised if we did not. You know, I attend every one of the classified security briefings that we are provided as members of Congress. Mm-hmm. And, you know, usually there's some rancor. There's some back and forth between Democrats and Republicans at those things. But, man, when we go and we hear about what's happening in Ukraine, and, of course, I can't go into it, but we have emissaries from the White House. We have cabinet members. These are, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Milley, Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, Tony Blinken, Secretary of State. These people are on top of their game. This is a cast of all-stars. We had Gina Raimondo to talk to us about economic sanctions. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Joe, the point I'm making is that when we get these briefings about Ukraine, there's almost pure unanimity on both sides of the aisle.
Understood.
About utter disdain and really hatred for what Putin is doing in Ukraine. And as I say, just from the feeling that I get from that room, mm-hmm. It's near unanimity. I would be amazed if President Biden doesn't get what he wants in terms of further supplemental
It's not too often you've seen that in your career. Like I said, though, it sounds almost like a retainer. Are we talking about a one-time payment, do you suspect, or do you want to get some kind of a revolving sort of system of shipments going here where we just keep sending the weapons over until this thing is done?
You know, I'm a history major, Joe, and I hate to keep referring back to the times of World War II, but there's so many parallels, and one of them is something that Franklin Roosevelt instituted, which was Lend-Lease, a way to get armaments over to the people standing up to the Axis powers. And there was no time deadline on that. There was no cap set on those things. And let's face it, Ukraine is in for a long slog. But I'll never forget, Joe, when Volodymyr Zelensky appeared live to all of us in that classified security briefing room. Mm-hmm. People were filling up listening to his story and looking at the video that he provided us. Yeah. If this goes on for some time, I would not be surprised.
Well, you know, there were calls by a lot of critics of the administration to do more earlier. And at the time, you know, we didn't really have a sense of even what that was. We were talking about sanctions. We knew that shoulder-launched missiles were going over there. We knew there was an argument over MiGs from Poland. But how come we didn't send all of this stuff before it became such a race to get it to the front lines before Vladimir Putin could cause more destruction? Do you wish we had done that weeks or months ago?
Look, that's an easy thing to cast aspersions on the other side, to score easy political points. If you had done this, things would have been better. And that's a two-way street. You know, there was, the former guy held up deliveries of Javelin missiles. I don't want to talk about that stuff. It doesn't advance the ball anywhere for us to.
I understand, Congressman, and I'm not trying to start something here. I just remember that day he spoke, and members were so passionate about getting what they could there, and Republicans were ringing the bell to say, listen, we got to send more faster. And we're in the process still of trying to figure out how to get all of these arms into the right hands. I don't mean to oversimplify this, but there was a call to do more earlier.
Passion is the right word that you just used, Joe. There's a lot of high passion going on, and
that's right,
and rightly so. This is absolute evil that we're witnessing in Ukraine, and is perpetrated by an evil monster, Putin. And so it stirs up passions. You know, there are a lot of great former service members serving in the House. People who were part of the United States Air Force, for example. They can see very clearly that our Air Force would make mincemeat of what Putin has done to his Air Force. You know that he's diverted a lot of training money away from the Air Force so that their pilots are not trained up the way American pilots are. You know, there's a muscle memory involved in flying fighter jets. And if they don't get enough training hours in, those muscles atrophy.
Sure
and
they do.
It's pretty obvious that that's what's happening with the Russian Air Force. And there have been, problems with the Russian Army as well that we've all talked about. Mm-hmm. But I mentioned that because some of the passions, the exuberances of members of Congress have manifested themselves. Some have said, well, we ought to do a no-fly zone.
That's right.
Over Ukraine.
You had Senator Chris Coons 2 weeks ago suggesting that we open the conversation of adding American troops. You know, let's say there's a chemical or a nuclear weapons attack or something. Do you worry about that kind of creep, Congressman?
Of course I do. And here's the reason. Is that Putin has this large stockpile of intercontinental ballistic missiles, and he just tested one. The problem is this: we can say, "Well, we have wonderful defenses to those things." Joe, I don't want to find out how good our defenses are in that kind of a situation, and I don't want to get close to that line. So I'm very happy, and I think that the vast majority of members of Congress are going to sign on to this kind of supplemental to provide these heroic Ukrainians with what they need. I also want to say how proud we are in my district in northeastern Pennsylvania. We have the Toby Hanna Army Depot, and that's a depot that repairs field equipment. And when when we learned that there are field equipment and spare parts involved in this assistance, there are people who work for Toby Hanna Army Depot in Poland right now. Involved in the Ukraine effort. It's a proud time for us in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Well, we consider the men and women in the military, Congressman. While I have the time, I want to ask you about a bill that you sponsored that it passed the House last month, allowing Marines harmed by contaminated drinking water at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, to seek compensation. You talked about those Marines on the House floor. Let's listen.
They know they're going to be in harm's way at some point, but when they went to Camp Lejeune for combat training, they didn't realize what their real enemy was going to be. It was going to be leukemia, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, aplastic anemia, liver cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease. Not only the Marines, but their families were subject to this from the water.
Congressman Cartwright, will that bill get a vote in the Senate?
I think it will. I have a great deal of pride in that bill. I've worked on it for 4 years now. For between the middle 1950s to 1987. That drinking water at Camp Lejeune, where Marines go to do combat training in North Carolina, was contaminated. Somebody decided to store the airplane fuel right near the water supply, which was a horrible mistake, and it ended up contaminating the water to the point where they had things like benzene and toluene, known carcinogens, present in the drinking water at levels as high as 3,400 times the maximum safe amount. People came down with cancer, 8 different kinds of cancers, birth defects. There were families living there, and the employees at Camp Lejeune as well. It's just an utter outrage, and it's an American scandal and tragedy. And the best thing that we can do is afford them a chance to achieve justice, and that's what this bill does. The Camp Lejeune Justice Act was incorporated into the Honoring Our Pact Act.
Sure. Well, let us know when this gets to the Senate, Congressman. We want to follow its